So Wanda, you've done the harvesting and removed the lower leaves, and I know that all of that is in preparation for the next part of it, which is going to be the leaning and lowering process. So kind of walk through the steps that you would do in preparation for the leaning and lowering.
So as we move up the vine, we have all of, like Bob said, we have all of our leaves removed. So now I need to make sure before I lower these guys that I have my stem secured to the string. That's where I'm going to use my tomato clips. The tomato clips have a small tooth on the inside that locks onto that string. So as I move up, I have a clip here. So I'm going to move up probably about a foot or so, sometimes 8 inches, and I'm going to put my clip underneath. I'm going to use here. I'm going to put my clip underneath a lateral leaf that's nice and secure, never underneath my trusses here because I don't want them to bend over the clip. So I'm going to attach my clip to my string, and then I'm going to clip it on. That way the vine is supported as I work through this next process. And this is a very fast growing tomato, so sometimes there's 1 or 2 clips that I add. With a big beefsteak tomato, it's usually about 1 clip per plant per week is a standard.
And so the main purpose of that clip is to prevent the tomato from sliding down. If you didn't have that support on there, number one, you're doing 2 things with that clip, it seems. You're keeping the main stem of our indeterminate tomato close to the string, and secondly, by putting that clip strategically underneath the leaf, you're not allowing that plant to slide down. So this is an indeterminate. Typically in greenhouse tomatoes, we have indeterminate plants, and by the time the end of the season comes, this particular plant might be 30 feet long. So you're going to be doing the same process for many, many, many weeks, and we use an indeterminate plant so that we can continue to get that harvest over a long period of time. If it was a determinate plant that would stop at some point like we're used to growing out in the garden, it's not even going to work in this situation. So go ahead and continue your way on up with the next task that you would do.
Okay. So as we move up, we cluster pruned the bottom tomatoes. So I would do that. I would look at my tomatoes, and I get a lot of excess growth off of the ends. The more fruit I have on these plants, the smaller my fruit are going to be. These are also long trusses, so as I lower and lean, there's a probability that the fruit are going to be on the floor, and we don't want that. So I've been trimming these guys back to about 8 to 10, maybe 12 fruit per cluster. So that's something that I'll do as I'm working my way up the stem. We took suckers off of the bottom leaves, so as I move up the stem, I'm seeing that we have new suckers up top. They're really small, so I know that I can just pull these guys off.
Before you move that next one, Wanda, just to point out that this sucker, oftentimes people get confused, which is the sucker here? Is that the sucker or is that the sucker? And you can always tell a sucker because it's between the leaf itself and the main stem. All right, so clearly this is the one that's growing in the middle of that one. Sometimes when we get behind, the sucker almost looks as big as the main stem. So this is a really good stage. You don't want it to really be much larger than that, do you, when you remove the suckers?
I don't, because I want them to break free, very cleanly and easily, and I want the smallest wound as possible left on that plant. But at the same time, as I move up the plant, sometimes there's a chance that I might damage the growing tip of this plant. So if I do that, it's always good to have one of these small suckers that can then take over in case I break or damage the top of that plant. I can keep that plant going.
So in an indeterminate plant, you have the apical dominance of that main stem is going to continue to be the priority of our plant. But if something were to happen and we break it and we left this sucker on here, it would then take the place of the main stem. So all is not lost as long as you leave a couple of these really small suckers on as sort of a risk management tool.
Yes.
I know that if I was managing this crop, I would have a lot more breakage than you would. But that's always a good risk management tool to leave a couple of suckers on there at the very tip top in case something does happen in the leaning and lowering process.
And it always happens.
Yes.
So I'm going to take these guys off. I'm going to move to this next plant where I've got a little bit bigger one, but it's still pretty small. So I'm going to see, they don't come off as easy once they start getting big. That's when, see, it still popped clean, left a bit of a wound. So then I'm going to move, I've got my clips on, so I'm going to move to lowering and leaning.
So Wanda, we've done a lot of the major tasks here, and if you'll allow me, I'm going to lower this particular one. This is one of those things that's really hard to describe for folks that that are not used to this. So we've got all the clips. The plant is well supported to the string, and on this coil we have extra string. So when I release the spool, it's going to spin and allow string to be released so that I can lower this one down in this previous position of the one before it. At the same time, when we call this leaning and lowering, I need to continue to lean it in the direction that this whole side is going to go. So it's going to go something like this. I'm going to sort of hold this other hand sort of on the clip itself so I get a little bit of extra support. I'm going to release that, and this spool is released when I push in here. So I can release that down and lean it and then reattach it there. There's a little hook on this that catches that spool and stops it at that point. So now that one has been lowered, and if we have additional tasks that we want to do up top here now, I've brought that down a little closer to us. I know in some commercial operations and really high cables, they may be up 10 feet high, that there's all kinds of scissors lifts that are used and other kinds of ways to get up high. In our greenhouse, in our research greenhouse here, we don't have that. We've got a little bit lower, more manageable height to be able to work with. So I've lowered that one into the position of the previous one, and now I'm going to take this one and I'm going to lower it into the position of the one I just moved. However, I just want to make a note, we've got a big stem over here, and purposely we're leaving that not hooked with a clip just to be able to show you that we can still do further work once we lower it. So I'm going to be very careful because of that extra, and now I'm going to lower the string down and I'm going to lean it into the position, and now it's obvious that Wanda, you need to come in and do some additional work that you would be used to doing here. So in some cases when it's up really high, for Wanda or I, it might be a little bit too high to be able to do that. So she's got the clip placed again, just to emphasize that we have that clip placed firmly underneath this leaf, and it's not going to allow it to slide down anymore. It's interesting that different varieties are gonna change just ever so slightly in the number of days between clusters, but just as a rough estimate, we look at between one fruit cluster to the next approximately 1 week. So from the time that the ones down at the below were set or in the bloom stage and set into fruit to the next one is approximately 1 week. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 8 weeks of worth of tomatoes that are on this truss. So the weekly harvest period makes sense because we're putting on a truss a week. Sometimes there's different terminology that would be used, and so we might use interchangeably a cluster of tomatoes, a hand of tomatoes, or a truss of tomatoes. They all really are meaning the same thing. So we've got this plant pretty well ready to go. I don't know if there's anything else that you see up here that you might want to deal with, or if you feel comfortable that that's as far as we need to go on that plant.
There's at this stage, once I get it lowered and leaned and it's at a more manageable height and I can get that last clip on, then I would come through and I could continue to cluster prune these tomatoes. So we have, this is an odd cluster. We got some that didn't pollinate, so I would take this cluster off right about there. And then as I move up, I know I've got one in the back here that's got a good fruit set on it. So I'm gonna let these guys go and I'm gonna take that one off there. And this one is a bit of an odd hand, and this variety in particular does this where it will set out a twin stem. So then I have to decide between the two, I leave enough fruit on. So I'm going to take both of these off here, because these are going to flower late and they're going to change the way it's harvested and the way they ripen lower down in a few weeks. So I'm going to go ahead and take those off.
Okay. And boy, wouldn't it be perfect if we had every cluster to set 12 flowers and set every one so that you could uniformly make these decisions. But sometimes if we have cloudy weather, for instance, you don't get the full pollination and fruit set that we would otherwise have. So in this case, we have a relatively small tomato, and even though it's a small tomato, people probably want the biggest size of the small tomato as they can. So the general principles here are going to be the same whether we're using a really small variety like a cherry type or all the way up to a big beefsteak, the principles are still going to be the same. People typically want large fruit in the United States. The exception to that would be the cluster harvest types, where they all set uniformly and the entire cluster is harvested at one time. So, Juan, it looks like we got things going here. Maybe just as the process goes, we would continue to move these other plants down the line as we go. But this one looks like it's set and ready to go.